I want to say James Patterson, in my eyes, is a hero, and I sincerely hope that in a room full of writers, that many more of you will step up to the plate and help the children of New York City become more eager to read and write. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Carmen. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And special thanks to Little Brown, Michael Peach, Reagan Arthur, Larry Kirschbaum, for sticking with me through thick and thicker since I was 26, over a dozen years ago. Thanks also to Bob Barnett and Deneen Howe, who are here. It is a long, long way from North Plank Road in Newburgh, New York, to the National Book Awards. I feel exhilarated and proud/happy to have my wife Sue and our son Jack here. But to be honest, I also feel a little uncomfortable. I feel exhilarated because it's a long way from Newburgh. I feel uncomfortable because, well, I am the elephant in the room, the bull in the china shop, the stranger in a strange land, the Big Mac at Cipriani. So let me tell you a few things about myself, and maybe you won't think of me as a stranger after tonight. It's relevant to my being here that Newburgh was a tough town when I was a kid. It still is a tough town. My father grew up in the Newburgh poorhouse, called the Pogie. His mother, my grandmother, was a charwoman who cleaned the poorhouse's bathrooms and kitchen. For her work, she and my father got to share a room. When my father was heading off to World War II, he received a phone call from a man in Port Jervis who was also going off to war. And this man, George Hazelton, said that his parents told him the night before that they loved him very much, but they weren't his birth parents. He'd been adopted when he was a year old. Then George Hazelton revealed that he was my father's brother. My grandmother had been forced to give up her baby George for adoption before my father was born. That's vintage Newburgh. My other good grandfather owned a small restaurant there. The cook was an African-American woman named Laura. When I was 6, Laura was having problems with her husband. She moved in with our family. That's the way it was in our house. And I think I spent more time with Laura's family than with my own. And that experience with a very loving and lovely Black family is how I came to write the Alex Cross novels. That's where it all started. During my senior year at St. Patrick's High School in Newburgh, I applied to Harvard, Yale, Colby, and Bates. Thank God I didn't wind up at Harvard. I never got a response, so I went to see the Christian brother who was the principal of the high school. He said that he never sent my transcripts to any of those secular schools. This is a true story. Only to the affiliated Catholic college. He then told me that I had a full scholarship to the Catholic college, to which I had never applied. My years at that school, Manhattan College, turned out to be wonderfully rewarding. It was a terrific experience. After Manhattan, I went to grad school in literature at Vanderbilt, also rewarding. I took a job in advertising, partly, believe it or not, because I'd been rejected for a job driving a taxi cab. The dispatcher said that my hair was too long. I wish I had that problem now. He called me a communist and chased me out of the garage. That's nonfiction, folks. Possibly to prove that I wasn't a communist, I took the job in advertising, but I've been clean for over 20 years. During my years as a student and while I was working the night shift at McLean Hospital in Belmont, I fell in love with novels and short stories. I read everything. My favorite novels to this day are Mr. Bridge and Mrs. Bridge. When I was 25, I wrote a novel of my own, a mystery called The Thomas Berriman Number. It was turned down by 31 publishers. It then won an Edgar as the best first mystery novel of the year. I keep a list of all the editors who turned down my first novel. Sometimes they send me books and ask for blurbs. Mostly, though, they're dead. Because of all these experiences, especially growing up in Newburgh, I've always felt compelled to do the best I can, compelled to tell the best stories I'm capable of, especially my stories for children, compelled to start an imprint for kids called Jimmy, with the simplest possible mission: when a kid finishes a Jimmy book, he or she will say, "Please give me another book." What a sweet thing to hear from your child. Please give me another book. I'm also compelled to innovate because I feel that publishing needs to innovate more, much more. On occasion, I found myself stupidly standing up and saying that I believe publishing is in some trouble, that I believe American literature is in some trouble. I'm compelled to try to help independent bookstores survive and prosper, and to help school libraries in any way I can. When Scholastic and I made an offer last year to give money to school libraries, we received over 28,000 pleas for help in the first 10 days. And that tells an incredible story about the state of our school libraries. I guess I am doomed to being a doer, a serial doer actually, and I encourage all the very talented people in this room to always be doers. There is so much to do right now. So let's all be literarians, whatever the hell that means. Now, I think most of us know what it means. Let's find a way to make sure there's another generation of readers out there, and bookstores, and libraries, and healthy, flourishing publishers. One last Newburgh story. During the summer, my good grandfather, Poppy, would take me on his delivery route once a week, and he delivered ice cream and frozen food, and we'd be up at 4 in the morning packing up his truck. And we all know that that isn't the most romantic thing in the world, to be driving a truck early in the morning. But every morning, my grandfather would motor over the Storm King Mountain toward West Point, and he'd be singing at the top of his voice, and that clumsy truck would be bouncing all over the roads, and he had a terrible voice, and he would sing things like "Oh, Susanna," or "Put Another Nickel in the Nickelodeon." And he told me, he said, "Jim," he said, when you grow up," he said, "I don't care if you're a truck driver or president of the United States, just remember that when you go over the mountain to work in the morning, you've got to be singing." I do. And I hope all the same for you. That's it, the 4-minute autobiography, vintage James Patterson. By the way, I didn't wear a tux because the Newburgh tux is powder blue with a ruffled shirt. Thank you so much for this precious moment.